Hello listeners and welcome back to our channel. I'm Storyteller. So, I hope that all of you are doing great and all of you are eager to learn something new. That's why today I am here with our new story, Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. This is the third part of this story. First and second part are already uploaded on the channel. So now let's start with our third part. And if you like my voice or like this story, so please do subscribe to our channel. So now let's move towards it. Let us set off well armed without its appearing who we are, but that we may not excite any suspicion, let only one or two go into the town together and join at our ranges, which shall be the great square. In the meantime, our commander who brought us the good news, and I will go and find out the house, that we may consult what had best be done. This speech and plan was approved by all, and they were soon ready. They filled off in parties of two each, after some interval of time, and got into the town without being in the least suspected. The captain and he who had visited the town in the morning as a spy came in the last. He led the captain into the street where he had marked Ali Baba's residence, and when they came to the first of the houses which Morgiana had marked, he pointed it out. But the captain observed that the next door was also chalked in the same manner and in the same place, and showing it to his guide, asked him which house it was, that or the first. The guide was so confused that he knew not what answer to make, but he was still more puzzled when he and the captain saw 5 or 6 houses similarly marked. He assured the captain with an oath that he had marked but one, and could not tell who had chalked the rest, so that he could not distinguish the house which the cobbler had stopped at. The captain, finding that their design had proved aberrative, went directly to their place of residence and told his troop that they had lost their labor and must return to their cave. He himself sent them the example, and they all returned as they had come. When the troop was all got together, the captain told them the reason of their returning, and presently the conductor was declared by all worthy of death. He commanded himself, acknowledging that he ought to have taken better precautions, and prepared to receive the stroke from him who was appointed to cut off his head. But as the safety of the troop required the discovery of the second intruder into the cave, another of the gang, who promised himself that he should succeed better, presented himself, and his offer being accepted, he went and corrupted Baba Mustafa as the other had done, and being shown the house, marked it in a place more remote from sight, with red chalk. Not long after, Morgiana, whose eyes nothing could escape, went out and seeing the red chalk and arguing with herself, and she had done before, marked the other neighbor's house in the same place and manner. The robber, on his return to his company, valued himself much on the precaution he had taken, which he looked upon as an infallible way of distinguishing Alibaba's house from the others. And the captain and all of them thought it must succeed. They conveyed themselves in the town with the same precaution as before. But when the robber and his captain came to the street, they found the same difficulty, at which the captain was enraged, and the robber in as great confusion as his predecessor. Thus, the captain and his troop were forced to retire a second time, and much more dissatisfied, while the robber who had been the author of the mistake underwent and the same punishment, which he willingly submitted to. The captain, having lost two brave fellows of his troop, was afraid of diminishing it too much by pursuing this plan to get information of the residence of their plunderer. He found by their example that their heads were not so good as their hands on such occasions, and therefore resolved to take upon himself the important commission. Accordingly, he went and addressed himself to Baba Mustafa, who did him the same service he had done to the other robbers. He did not set any particular mark on the house, but examined and observed it so carefully by passing often by it that it was impossible for him to mistake it. The captain, well satisfied with his attempt and informed of what he wanted to know, returned to the forest. And when he came into the cave where the troop waited for him, said, "Now, commanders, nothing can prevent our full revenge, as I am certain of the house, and on my way either I have thought how to put it into execution. But if anyone can form a better expedient, let him communicate for it." He then told them his contrivance, and as they approved of it, ordered them to go into the villages about and buy 19 mules with 38 large leather jars, one full of oil and the others empty. In 2 or 3 days' time, the robbers had purchased the mules and jars, and as the mouths of the jars were rather too narrow for his purpose, the captain caused them to be widened, and after having put one of his men into each, with the weapons which he thought fit, leaving open the seam which had been undone to leave them room to breathe, he rubbed the jars on the outside with oil from the full vessel. Things being thus prepared, when the 19 mules were loaded with 37 robbers in jar and the jar of oil, the captain, as their driver, set out with them, and reached the town by the dusk of the evening. As he had intended, he led them through the street till he came to Alibaba's, at whose door he designed to have knocked, but was prevented by his sitting thereafter, super to take a little fresh air. He stopped his mules, addressed himself to him, and said, I have brought some oil a great way to sell at tomorrow's market, and it is now so late that I do not know where to lodge. If I should not be troublesome to you, do me the favor to let me pass the night with you, and I shall be very much obliged by your hospitality. Though Ali Baba seen the captain of the robbers in the forest and had heard him speak, it was impossible to know him in the disguise of an oil merchant. He told him he should be welcome, and immediately opened his gates for the mules to go into the yard. At the same time, he called to a slave and ordered him, when the mules were unloaded, to put them into the stable and to feed them, and then went to Morgiana to bid her get a good supper for his guest. After they had finished supper, Ali Baba, charging Morgiana afresh to take care of his guest, said to her, Tomorrow morning I design to go to the bath before day. Take care my bathing linen to be ready. Give them to Abdallah, which was the slave's name, and make me some good broth against I return. After this, he went to bed. In the meantime, the captain of the robbers went into the yard and took off the lid of each jar and gave his people orders what to do, beginning at the first jar and so on to the last. He said to each man, As soon as I throw some stones out of the chamber window where I lie, do not fail to come out, and I will immediately join you. After this, he returned into the house, when Morgiana, taking up a light, conducted him to his chamber, where she left him, and he, to avoid any suspicion, put the light out soon after, and laid himself down in his clothes, that he might be the more ready to rise. Morgiana, remembering Ali Baba's order, got his bathing linen ready and ordered Abdallah to set on the pot for the broth. But while she was preparing it, the lamp went out, and there was no more oil in the house, nor any candles. What to do, she did not know, for the broth must be made. Abdallah, seeing her very uneasy, said, Do not fret and tease yourself, but go into the yard and take some oil out of one of the jars. Morgiana thanked Abdallah for his advice, took the oil pot, and went into the yard. When, as she came nigh the first jar, the robber within said softly, Is it time? Though naturally much surprised at finding a man in the jar instead of the oil she wanted. She immediately felt the importance of keeping silence, as Alibaba, his family, and herself were in great danger, and collecting herself without showing the least emotion, she answered, "Not yet, but presently." She went quietly in this manner to all the jars, giving the same answer, till she came to the jar of oil. By this means, Morgiana found that her master Ali Baba had admitted 38 robbers into his house, and that this pretended oil merchant was their captain. She made what haste she could to fill her oil pot and returned into the kitchen, where as soon as she had lighted her lamp, she took a great kettle, went again to the oil jar, filled the kettle, and set it on a large wood fire, and as soon as it boiled, went and poured enough into every jar to stifle and destroy the robber within. When this action, worthy of the courage of Morgiana, was executed without any noise, as she had projected, she returned into the kitchen with the empty kettle, and having put out the great fire she had made to boil the oil, and leaving just enough to make the broth, but put out the lamp also, and remained silent, resolving not to go to rest till, through a window of the kitchen which opened into the yard, she had seen what might follow. She had not waited long before the captain of the robbers got up, opened the window, and finding no light and hearing no noise or anyone stirring in the house, gave the appointed signal by throwing little stones, several of which hit the jars, as he doubted not by the sound they gave. He then listened, but not hearing or perceiving anything whereby he could judge that his companions stirred, he began to grow very uneasy, threw stones again a second and also a third time, and could not comprehend the reason that none of them should answer his signal. Much alarmed, he went softly down into the yard, and going to the first jar, while asking the robber whom he thought alive if he was in readiness, smelt the hot boiled oil, which sent forth a steam out of the jar. Hence, he knew that this plot to murder Ali Baba and plunder his house was discovered. Examining all the jars one after another, he found that all his gang were dead, and enraged to despair at having failed in his design, he forced the lock of a door that led from the yard to the garden, and climbing over the walls, made his escape. When Morgiana saw him depart, she went to bed, satisfied and pleased to have succeeded so well in saving her master and family. Ali Baba rose before day, and followed by his slave, went to the baths, entirely ignorant of the important event which had happened at home. When he returned from the baths, he was very much surprised to see the oil jars and to learn that the merchant was not gone with the mules. He asked Morgiana, who opened the door, the reason for it. My good master, answered she, God preserve you and all your family. You will be better informed of what you wish to know when you have seen what I have to show you, if you will follow me. As soon as Morgiana had shut the door, Alibaba followed her. When she requested him to look into the first jar and see if there was any oil. Ali Baba did so, and seeing a man, started back in alarm and cried out. Do not be afraid, said Morgiana. The man you see there can neither do you nor anybody else any harm. He is dead. Oh, Morgiana, said Ali Baba, what is it you show me? Explain yourself. I will, replied Morgiana. Moderate your astonishment and do not excite the curiosity of your neighbors, for it is the great importance to keep this affair secret. Look into all the other jars. Ali Baba examined all the other jars, one after another, and when he came to that which had the oil in it, found it prodigiously shrunk, and stood for some time motionless, sometimes looking at the jars and sometimes at Morgiana, without saying a word, so great was his surprise. At last, when he had recovered himself, he said, And what has become of the merchant? Merchant, answered she, he is as much one as I am. I will tell you who he is and what has become of him. But you had better hear the story in your own chamber, for it is time for your health that you had your broth after your bathing. Morgiana then told him all she had done, from the first observing the mark upon the house to the destruction of the robbers and the flight of their captain. On hearing of these brave deeds from the lips of Morgiana, Ali Baba said to her, God by your means has delivered me from the snares of these robbers, led for my destruction. I owe therefore my life to you, and for the first token of my acknowledgement, I give you your liberty from this moment till I can complete your recompense as I intend. Ali Baba's garden was very long and shaded at the farther and by a great number of large trees. Near these, he and the slave Abdallah dug a trench, long and wide enough to hold the bodies of the robbers. And as the earth was light, they were not long in doing it. When this was done, Ali Baba hid the jars and weapons, and as he had no occasion for the mules, he sent them at different times to be sold in the market by his slave. While Alibaba was taking these measures, the captain of the 40 robbers returned to the forest with inconceivable mortification. He did not stay long. The loneliness of the gloomy cave become frightful to him. He determined, however, to avenge the death of his companions and to accomplish the death of Ali Baba. For this purpose, he returned to the town and took a lodging in a khan, disguising himself as a merchant in silks. Under this assumed character, he gradually conveyed a great many sorts of rich stuffs and fine linen to his lodging from the cave, but with all the necessary precautions to conceal the place whence he brought them, in order to dispose of the merchandise when he had thus amazed them together. He took a warehouse which happened to be opposite to Qasim's, which Ali Baba's son had occupied since the death of his uncle. Because this story is too long, so rest of the story we will cover in our next part 4. Till then, stay tuned with us. I hope that all of you like this story, so please do like, share, subscribe and comment on our channel. Thanks for listening and wait for the next part.